In Peru, relatives of the 18 victims killed by police repression in Juliaca on January 9th marched on Tuesday to demand the resignation of President Dina Boluarte and justice for their relatives. The United Nations maintains its efforts to support children in Haiti, where at least 2.6 million minors are in need of humanitarian aid. And in France, over 1.27 million demonstrators took to the streets in rejection of the government's plans to reform the country's pension system. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Peru, relatives of the 18 victims killed by police repression in Juliaca in early January marched on Tuesday to demand the resignation of President Dina Boluarte and justice for their relatives. After 27 days of indefinite strike in the department of Puno, the people of Juliaca do not give up and continue on the streets, from where they also demand a constituent assembly. Local media reported that protesters peacefully marched towards the main square of the southern city. Demonstrators carry signs demanding justice and Boluarte's resignation, together with black flags that indicate the mourning of the locals who have lost their relatives at the hands of the violent repression that has been unleashed upon them. In the meantime, the Peruvian National Congress issued a decree to extend the legislation until February 10th, while popular mobilizations continue. The President of the Congress, Jose William Zapata, said it is necessary to modify the extension of the call for the first ordinary legislature of the annual session 2022-2023, so that the plenary has the necessary time to address and debate the topics included in the fixed agenda. Zapata pointed out that such a move can be done at any time by exercising the power provided by the Congress regulation. During his visit to Mexico, European Union Commission Vice President Frans Timmermans said the bloc expects to sign the free trade agreement with Mercosur countries. Mercosur, comprised of Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay and Paraguay, reached a deal with the EU in 2019, following 20 years of negotiations, but it has yet to be ratified. One of the main stumbling blocks has been concerns over environmental policies of Brazil's far-right former president, Jair Bolsonaro. Current head of state, Luis Ignacio da Silva, who came to office on January 1st, has vowed to restart talks. Timmermans added the hopes to conclude the deal before the next summit with Latin American representatives, which will take place on July 17th and 18th in Brussels.
Commission, I would love us to be able to do this before the end of the Swedish presidency. I think there are new arguments on the table. We are no longer dealing with a government that is actively promoting deforestation. This is a government that is actively fighting deforestation, and they should feel our solidarity in that fight. They should feel that we understand what they're trying to do.
The government of Haiti confirmed on Tuesday that the installation of the high transition of the country's current crisis has been achieved. According to the Ministry of Communication, Prime Minister Ariel Henry held a fruitful meeting with the members of the Committee on Issues of National Interest, where they decided to proceed with the installation of the structure. The High Transitional Council's main objective is to promote dialogue and to work closely with the authorities on major projects during the transitional period, including combating insecurity, reforming the Constitution, and holding elections. According to the decree which officialized the structure, work must also be done to transform the justice system, modify the economy, and advance in other programs such as the rule of law and social security. The Council will be in charge of guaranteeing the credibility and integrity of the future electoral process. Meanwhile, the United Nations maintains its efforts to support children in Haiti, where at least 2.6 million minors are in need of humanitarian aid. The UN Children's Fund warned in a recent report that the number of Haitian children in need of humanitarian assistance has increased by 500,000 over the past 2 years. The numbers are rising as armed violence, combined with a resurgence of cholera, food insecurity, and inflation, limit access to essential services such as health, nutrition, water and sanitation, and education for millions of children and their families. The UN agency is therefore advocating for an extension of its support through a larger contribution. According to its estimates, the agency's humanitarian response in the country received about 40% of the funds needed last year. In Cuba, the 40th anniversary of the Literature Nobel Prize awarded to Gabriel Garcia Marquez will be celebrated with a colloquium dedicated to the outstanding Colombian writer at the Havana's International Book Fair. On Tuesday, the Cuban publishing company ICAIC announced the event, which will take place as part of the International Book Fair schedule from February 9th to the 19th at the San Carlos de la Cabaña Historic Military Park and the city's Historic Center. The colloquium dedicated to the life and work of Garcia Marquez will feature the presentation of two titles related to Gabo and cinema. This year, the Havana International Book Fair will be dedicated to Colombia as its guest of honor and will pay tribute to Fina Garcia Maruz and Antonio Núñez Jiménez on their centenaries, among other celebrated authors. Let us take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. In a few days, millions of Ecuadorians will go to the polls to elect local authorities, the 7 members of the Council of Citizen Participation and Social Control, and to decide whether or not to approve the popular consultation proposed by Guillermo Lazo's government, amid high levels of violence. Our correspondent in Ecuador, Henry Pillajo, with more details.
The wave of violence and killings in the country intensifies as the first month of the year comes to an end. Government authorities identify the events as related to organized crimes and drug trafficking.
We are living total different times. Ecuador is perhaps facing the highest levels of violence in its history, with terrorist attacks and gang clashes which unfortunately leave us with a legacy of violence in the country.
A critical scenario that, according to experts, has its origin in the lack of structural decisions.
It is a total failure at all levels. At the lowest because of lack of planning, equipment, budget. At the operational level because they have people incapable not only of understanding the problems but also of understanding what is happening. At the strategic level because there's a lack of real political commitment to fight crime, to fight corruption, and also a lack of knowledge about the reality that they are managing.
In the middle of insecurity and violence, Ecuadorians go to the polls, a process they consider unusual and that reflects the crisis and distrust in politics.
We are living a political campaign process which ends at the polls on February the 5th. It has too many components both in number of ballots and in the objectives of the different ballots, which is undoubtedly part of the political situation we're going through in this country.
The country will also decide whether or not to approve the popular consultation proposed by President Lazo to amend the Constitution with the purpose of resolving issues of insecurity. However, the results may not be as expected.
1 month, 2 months will go by, and if the crime rate and violent deaths continue to rise or remain at these alarming figures like the ones we ended last year, of 25 violent crimes per 100,000 inhabitants, what will the people say to the government? Would they ask? Would they complain?
More than 13 million Ecuadorians will go to the polls this Sunday, February the 5th, to elect the new national government authorities and to decide one of the two options, yes or no, to the 8 questions posed by the referendum.
Henry Pillajo, teleSUR, Ecuador.
The Venezuelan High Court of Justice presents the annual report on the activities of the judicial organs in a solemn act that marks the beginning of the judicial year 2023. The ceremony took place in the city of Caracas at the seat of the country's highest court in the presence of the president of the country, Nicolás Maduro, through with other authorities of the public authority. According to the agenda, the event began with the playing of the national anthem, and the president of the High Court, Gladys Gutierrez, presented the report of the 2022 exercise and declared the beginning of the 2023 period. The president of the High Court pointed out that the year 2022 was marked by the reform of the organic law of the country's highest court. On Tuesday, nearly 1,000 flights to and from the United States were canceled as a winter storm lashes parts of the nation's southern region. The storm was concentrated in the Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area and caused the region serious air transportation problems, with 288 trips suspended at the local international airport. As of this morning, at least 319 Southwest flights were listed as canceled and about 90 delayed, along with 308 suspended American Airlines flights and another 29 delayed. The National Weather Service had previously reported the arrival of a prolonged and significant ice storm, the impact of which will be felt over a large area from the southern plains to the Tennessee Valley. A record number of people took to the streets in France on Tuesday amid a wave of strikes over government plans to raise the retirement age to 64. Today's demonstrations happened in several large cities such as Montpellier, Nantes, Rennes, and Marseille, alongside Paris. Were even more massive than the first earlier this month, the strike caused severe disruption to energy and transport sectors. Total Energy says between 75% and 100% of workers at its refineries and fuel depots walk out, while electricity suppliers EDF said they are monitoring a drop in power to the national grid equivalent to 3 nuclear power plants. At the heart of their grievances is a plan by Emmanuel Macron's government to raise the legal retirement age from 62 to 64 by 2030, with a new law to enter into force in September 2023. On the other hand, trade unions are calling for a new days of massive strikes and protests in February.
The intersyndical calls on the whole population to mobilize by strike and demonstration even more massively on Tuesday 7th February and Saturday 11th February to say no to this reform. In the meantime, it called for more actions, initiative, meetings or general assemblies everywhere on the territory, in companies and services, in places of study, including by strike.
Russia's defense ministry reported on Tuesday that artillery had destroyed a Ukrainian naval training base located in the Black Sea port city of Achakov. According to the report, the site was the location of the 73rd Ukrainian Naval Special Operations Center, and during the bombing, 14 enemy soldiers were killed, including some British mercenaries who were acting as instructors of sabotage groups. According to Russian intelligence data, this Ukrainian base was used to launch the underwater drones which carried out the failed attacks last November against the port of Sevastopol, headquarters of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. The Ministry of Defense also informed that the artillery troops had liquidated a Ukrainian military warehouse with ammunition on the right bank of the Dnieper River in the Kherson region. Former North Atlantic Treaty Organization Secretary General Anders Rasmussen took part in a debate in the European Parliament regarding funding for Ukraine. Although he first stressed that NATO was not part of the war, he later on changed his mind by saying in a way the organization was part of the conflict.
Mr. Bütikofer asked me if NATO is part of the war. No, NATO is not part of the war. Will we consider individual NATO allies as part of the war? Yes, in a way, yes. We shouldn't hide that, because according to Article 51 in the UN Charter, every country that is attacked has the right to defend itself, of course, but it also has the right to request assistance from allies to help it counter that attack. And that's exactly what the Ukrainian government has done.
During his speech before Parliament, the former NATO Secretary General added that a victory in the conflict is to kick all Russian troops out of Ukraine.
Victory is to kick all Russian troops out of Ukraine. That's how it looks like. Because I can assure you, as long as you have Russian troops on Ukrainian soil, there'll be a conflict. And we need peace to start rebuilding and reconstruction of Ukraine. And that's why the only off-ramp for Putin is out of Ukraine. It's very simple. And to that end, we need to deliver to the Ukrainians everything they need to achieve that goal.
We have more news coming up after a far short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the South. Pope Francis demanded on Tuesday that foreign powers take their hands off Africa. Pope Francis arrived in the Democratic Republic of the Congo on Tuesday, denouncing economic colonialism that he said had plundered the resources of the mineral-rich and conflict-torn nation. Massive crowds thronged Kinshasa for a glimpse of the Pope mobile, cheering and waving flags as the 86-year-old pontiff made his way from the airport to the presidential palace. On his fifth trip to Africa, Pope Francis brings a message of peace to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and neighboring South Sudan. Despite its vast mineral reserves of minerals, the DRC remains one of the poorest countries in the world.
The poison of greed has smeared its diamonds with blood. This is a tragedy to which the economically more advanced world often closes its eyes, ears, and mouth. Yet this country and this continent deserve to be respected and listened to. They deserve to find space and receive attention. Hands of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, hands of Africa, stop choking Africa. It is not a mine to be stripped or a terrain to be plundered. May Africa be the protagonist of its own destiny.
During his speech alongside Pope Francis, DRC President Felix Tshisekedi condemned the conflict in his country, which he accuses Rwanda of fostering.
It should be noted that over the past 3 decades, the hospitality that characterizes us has been undermined by the enemies of peace and terrorist groups coming mainly from neighboring countries. In addition to armed groups, foreign powers eager for minerals in our subsoil commit cruel atrocities with the direct and cowardly support of our neighbor Rwanda, making security the first and greatest challenge for the government.
Pope Francis is expected to land in South Sudan on Friday for a 3-day visit, the first by a pope to the mostly Christian country since it achieved statehood in 2011. Since parting from Muslim-majority Sudan, South Sudan has been anything but peaceful, with civil war and ethnic bloodletting destroying any sense of the national unity heralded at its independence. The pontiff's visit is being held as a peace pilgrimage, and optimism is rife that Francis can revive a lost spirit of brotherhood in the traumatized young country.
Of course, South Sudan is a country which is devastated by war, devastated by the conflict, a country which is divided along ethnic and tribal lines. And we look at this visit, this ecumenical visit, as a hope for people of South Sudan, as a chance for people of South Sudan to think about their future.
We became helpless because of war, but still, with faith and trust in God, we know that with the coming of Holy Father to our country, we will experience the peace of Christ. And South Sudan is going to change. It's not going to remain as before.
Hopefully his coming, as already indicated in his motto of coming, this is his wish for the people of South Sudan to be united, to be one. And this, without any hesitation, that is what now moving the people of South Sudan to be one, to be united.
Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning said on Tuesday that the country's decision to require nucleic acid tests for travelers from South Korea upon arrival is a reasonable move and response to the previous discriminatory entry restriction measures targeting China.
Regrettably, a handful of countries have insisted on taking discriminatory entry restriction measures targeting China. China firmly rejects this, and it's reasonable to take reciprocal measures. We always firmly oppose the politicization of coronavirus response and deem that discriminatory restrictive measures against China should be lifted. We are willing to work with other countries to create more convenience for the normal personal exchanges between China and other countries.
We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.